Welcome to episode 12 of the AI for Churches podcast. In today's episode, we'll discuss new research that shows Christians aren't big fans of AI. And I recently sat down with Alderin, co-founder of SermonShots, to discuss the value of creating sermon clips with AI. Let's get started.
Welcome to the AI for Churches podcast. Our goal is to equip pastors and church leaders with resources related to artificial intelligence, helpful for sermon prep, creative ministries, outreach, and more. We do this by providing exclusive insights from AI experts, church leaders, and innovators actively leveraging AI to amplify the gospel and reach more people for Jesus Christ. Here are your hosts, Blair and Dr. David Thorne.
Well, hey there. Welcome to episode 12 of the AI for Churches podcast. Blair here with Dr. David Thorne. Good day to you, David.
And good day to you as well, fine sir.
It is a good day to talk about AI, and that's what we're going to do. If you happen to be new to the podcast and you haven't checked out previous episodes, make sure that you do that. If you haven't subscribed wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, make sure that you do so there. If you happen to be watching on our YouTube channel, make sure that you subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notified when there are new episodes released on our YouTube channel. And we have a whole website dedicated to AI for Churches. It is ai.missionalmarketing.com. Check it out. Articles, tools, resources, other things that might help you as a church leader navigate this crazy and fast-paced world of artificial intelligence. So the purpose of our conversation is to get together and kind of talk about things that are related to artificial intelligence, how those things impact the local church. David, why don't you kind of set the table for some of our conversation today?
Yeah, so we're going to jump into an article that we read that just kind of talked about how Christians are afraid and have some concerns about AI. But I actually first, before that, wanted to jump into talking about some recent tools and just kind of seeing, have you used any AI tools this past week that you've found interesting?
Well, I didn't use it this past week, but I got the results of it this past week. I know that's kind of weird. I've been writing a one-on-one discipleship curriculum for my church, which I have published on Amazon so that I could get copies printed at a relatively inexpensive price. It's like 150 pages here. And I bought some vector files to use for the cover. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, I'm holding it up right now. And I bought some vector files to kind of create the cover art for the different versions of it. We have a men's version and a women's version. And so I used the vector file as it kind of came out of the box for sort of the front cover of it, but I needed content or graphics for the back cover and the vector file. I'm not an expert in like vector manipulation and creating stuff. So I actually used Photoshop's generative fill feature tool to create sort of the back cover. So if you're looking at this, I'm kind of holding it up. I've got the front cover and the back cover, and I use the generative fill tool to kind of create the back side of the book cover so that it looked like the front cover. It took me a few little go rounds of it, but this was my first real effort in playing around with Photoshop generative fill. So I thought that was pretty cool. And by the way, here's one thing to note. I uploaded this into Amazon Kindle Direct Printer, or KDP, whatever, I think that's what it's called, Kindle Direct Printing, so that I could print copies of this. And they actually require you to disclose in a KDP upload now if you've used artificial intelligence tools to create the content. And they specify whether it's the content in the book or artwork or graphics or things like that you've used AI, or translations. That's another one that they ask you to do. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. It was cool. It sort of saved me the hassle of having to hire a graphic designer to create the content for me. I'm not a graphic designer. I dabble in it a little bit, but that's the AI tool that I've used recently. So it was actually a few weeks ago that I created it, but I literally just got a copy of the book this week in hand. So it's the first time I've kind of seen it in print.
Fancy. And that's one of the things that we have mentioned on the podcast before, the concept that AI is going to be built into how we use things more and more and more. And that's a great example where if you haven't noticed already, almost every platform that you use is going to start having little like stars for like, use this to generate something, or magic tools. I like that phrase.
Yeah.
And that's probably like a little one of those magic tools, which, magic is a fancy word for AI tool.
Yeah, it's fun. I've played around since then with the Photoshop generative tool, whatever that's called, generative fill. Played around with it a little bit. It's kind of fun. And if you're a Photoshop user and you haven't used that, make sure that you update to the newest version of Photoshop so that you can play around in it. It's pretty neat. What about you?
Yeah.
What have you been? I know you have. It's like this is your life. You're playing around with AI tools all the time. What's fun that you can share with us today?
Yes. So on the AI playground, I was out on the AI playground, quote unquote, and I was playing around with Meta's new image generator. Which if you want to try playing with it, the website is imagine.meta.com. It is very beta, and you just put in some words and it creates some stuff. So it's one of those things where it is definitely not as robust as any of the other image generation platforms that are out there right now, but it's new. It's Facebook. The one thing they have is money, and so it's going to get better.
Yes.
So.
Okay, that's cool. I went on there right before we started recording, and I didn't really play around with it much, but it looks like the results that it shows kind of look like a lot of the other image generation tools, right? There's a number of those that are out there. What's an image generation tool that you've used that you actually think is pretty solid? I know you've posted some stuff in our Facebook group, which, by the way, if you're listening or watching the podcast and you're not a part of our Facebook group, you should join the AI for Churches Facebook group. But what are some of the ones that you've used that you've actually found to be pretty good?
So one thing I just want to say is that as a general value, I always want to figure out how can we help churches do the most free as possible. And so, yes, there's a lot of you can pay to do this kind of stuff. But if we start with the level playing field of what can we offer and suggest that churches do for free? For free, I have found consistently the best results from Bing's image creator, bing.com/create. And then the other one I use is Ideogram, but ideogram.ai. But I would say bing.com/create gives you the most consistent free images that you can find. I do have a subscription to the ChatGPT 4, and that gives you good stuff. But you pay $20 a month. So it's one of those things. If you're going to spend $20 a month, ChatGPT 4 is probably your best bet to spend some money on.
One of the things I've noticed, and by the way, if you happen to be watching this on our YouTube channel, my video is flickering, and it's been doing that for the last couple of days. I have no idea why. So sorry. I hope you don't have a seizure from the flickering in my video. Maybe time for a new camera. I'm not exactly sure. Anyway, one of the things that I've noticed, and I see people post this kind of stuff in both the church communications group as well as AI for Churches group, is that oftentimes when people are trying to use these image generation features and they're using text in their prompts, text is for whatever reason, these AI generation tools for image generation, they really struggle with getting text right. So you get misspelled words and things like that all the time. I'm confident that that's something that, we're still in the baby stages of AI. It'll get worked out sooner than later.
And it's getting better. And that's one of those things where, 5 months ago, I would do not even put a word at all. Now, and there's little tricks. Like a trick I read recently was you put the text you want to use as short of text as possible, put it in the beginning of of your prompt and at the end, put it in quotes, and you put it in all caps. So those are a few things. They said if you do those things, it actually increases the how good the results are. It's still not great. I was trying to get an image that said the word communications. I was trying to say Merry Christmas, church communications, or something like that. And for the life, it could not spell the word communications. I don't even know what it was doing. So that's where probably your best bet is to just get the image, bring it out, use something like Canva to put the words in. That's going to be your best thing to do.
Yeah.
At this point.
That's a good call. You know what I mean? Even that little tip that you gave there with the things that you're learning, you're reading, hopefully that's worth the price of admission for those that are watching or listening and trying to use these tools. Let's pivot our conversation to this article that I don't know if you had seen it. I ran across it, I don't know, several days ago, and I pinged this to you, and I'm like, whoa, this is worth a conversation. It's an article that Barna published, and Barna's they're like the smart people in the church world that do all of the research that tell us, what people think. And they posted this article that basically said that most Christians don't want churches using AI. I know what my initial reaction was to that when I first saw the article. Tell me what your reaction was when you first saw that, David.
Here's an important thing for everyone listening. This research will have echoes, as in like throwing a pebble in a pond. There's ripples that will go from it. This will be talked about for quite a while. So if you are listening, it's important to know that this research exists that basically says that church people are not so excited about AI or their pastor's use of AI. I have many thoughts, but to sum it up in one big bubble is saying that I think that we as pastors have a responsibility to have our own view of AI and be able to disciple and shepherd our flock, to inform them on this topic and other topics like it, so that as shepherds of our flock, our sheep don't jump off into the ravine head first time and time again on a topic like this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there is a responsibility that pastors who have influence over the people in their churches, there's a responsibility that they have to really care for people through these initial stages of the AI world becoming reality for us, right? For most of us, I mean, I'm a Gen Xer, and for most of my life, artificial intelligence was science fiction. It wasn't reality. And therefore, for a lot of people, the idea that these things that have been science fiction our whole lives are now coming into reality, it almost feels like, okay, end times, mark of the beast, all this stuff. It's creepy and it's crazy. And I know you, even as we at Missional Marketing have developed our own AI for Churches platform and our sort of our image and our brand in this space, you have been very, very careful to make sure that we're not promoting AI as sort of like this creepy robots take over the world idea. That AI, while it is technology, it is not all creepy robots taking over the world, that there are actually some really good and helpful things that come from AI. And one of the things we've talked about on this podcast is efficiencies. But I'll just say this. I think that most Christians who responded to this survey saying that they're uncomfortable with their pastors and or their churches using AI, they have sort of this one lane view of what AI is and what it does. And basically what they're saying is, we don't want our pastor preaching a sermon that AI wrote for him. That's or her. That's essentially what they're saying. But I tell you what, as the people in my church that I'm leading do this discipleship curriculum that I shared a few minutes ago, I bet 0% of the people could care less that the back cover artwork was created by artificial intelligence. Like, it has zero bearing on their spiritual formation and their journey with Jesus. Am I off base here? What do you think?
Yeah. Or the use of a magic tool, you know, of that kind of idea. And here's one thing is, in the past 6 months, there have been multiple examples where a pastor has done an entire service written by AI. So the prayers were written, the sermon was written, various pieces were written. And then, so Christians are responding to those kind of articles because they're plastered everywhere. Church service written by AI, done by AI. And I think we can all agree that's not a good use of AI. So we're all on the same page about that.
Right.
But and here's what I was thinking is, sometimes I think pastors might jump to this thing of, oh, we need to be transparent and tell our churches every time we use AI. And this is where my mind goes. Do we want our pastors to stand up on a Sunday morning and say, hey guys, I just want to be honest. This past week, I like to share that I used an AI to help me correct the spelling mistakes in my sermon this week. So I just want to apologize for that. While I'm at it, I'd also like to just let you know that I used an AI to summarize a meeting I had this past week, and it just summarized and gave me notes about what happened in that meeting. I just want to be transparent about that. And finally, this is tough for me to say, but I was thinking about my sermon title this past week. And as I was brainstorming, I used an AI and it gave me ideas. I didn't use any of those ideas, but those ideas did help inspire what we actually are using. If you want me to put in my resignation, I can. That's what we have to understand is AI. It's tools. It's magic tools in our toolbox, and the toolbox is getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where any individual in our church or pastor attempting to not use AI may not be able to use anything that's on the internet, period, because it is all infused with AI.
I mean, here's the reality. Like it's coming. Microsoft will implement some AI tools in PowerPoint presentations. It's not there yet, but you know it's got to be coming. And so your pastor who uses a PowerPoint on Sunday morning is eventually going to be using those magic tools in PowerPoint that help create his slides for him on Sunday morning. I had a conversation with a church this last week about their Christmas ad campaign, something that we do for churches. We help them run ad campaigns, missional marketing, to promote things such as Christmas Eve services. And I was looking over the Christmas landing page that this church had built that their ads were going to. And the comms director was completely transparent with me and said, I used ChatGPT to write all of the copy on our Christmas Eve landing page. And I was like, good for you. You saved yourself a ton of time and grief in having to sit down and write all this ad copy or all this copy for the landing page. By the way, you did not put a little disclaimer there that says this copy was all written by ChatGPT. And the honest truth is, I don't think anybody will really care. It's like, come and celebrate Christmas Eve with so-and-so community church where we're going to sing Christmas Eve carols and light candles. And, that's generally what it said. It wasn't, again, it's not creepy robot stuff. It's a helpful tool that saved this communications director time in having to write the copy, or at least the first draft of the copy herself. She was able to use ChatGPT to give her a draft. She massaged it to put it into a vibe or a feel that was authentic to their church, and then copied that and pasted that right into the WordPress so that it was on that landing page.
Yeah. Saving time is such a big thing. And that's one of those things like, you're going to hear on this podcast again and again. My heart is how can we help overburden pastors who don't have enough time and are carrying so much responsibility in their week? How do we help them to save time on menial tasks that they don't need to spend hours and hours doing each week? If a magic tool can do it in a quarter of the time and end up doing better than what they even did, again, we're not talking about writing sermons. We're talking about saving time on menial tasks like editing a document for errors. I want every pastor to use those tools. Yeah. So there's a tons of things that a pastor does each week that just take a lot of time.
Yeah. Now, I think this is a good way for us to kind of transition into the interview that we're going to share today. Because speaking of saving time, I had another call with another church this week that told me that they had recently subscribed to an AI tool to help them pull sermon snippets from their weekly sermons to post on social media. And the end result is that it was saving them a ton of time. So rather than somebody having to go through the video manually and manually edit out sermon clips. And this person was not a video editor. They're a communications / marketing person, but now has the responsibility, because it falls under social media, to create 2 or 3 60-second clips from their sermon to post on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is that they're using them for. And she told me, she said, man, I just subscribed to this a couple of weeks ago, and it's already saving me a ton of time. And I'm like, boom, that is the purpose. And so speaking of tools that are designed to save church leaders or church staff or church volunteers time, why don't you cue up the interview that we have to share today?
Yeah. So I had a great conversation with Corey Alderin, who is the co-founder of SermonShots. SermonShots is one of the common AI generated video clip, sermon clip makers that are out there. It's not the only one. There's other ones, but I had a great conversation with Corey just talking about the idea of creating sermon clips using AI and how it can save pastors time and honestly help their sermon content go further. That's one thing we talk about in missional marketing is pastors and churches invest so much time in their sermons, and the sermon itself becomes a primary discipleship tool for the church. So then the pastor preaches it on Sunday and they put it back on the shelf and it collects dust for eternity.
Yeah.
And we say that's not great. We want to figure out how can we help churches take that great content that they're creating and help it to reach more people for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. And yeah, this conversation with Corey is a great way to get that topic going.
All right. Well, hey, thanks again for tuning in to this episode of the AI for Churches podcast. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. If there are things that you would like for David and me to dig into in this, and I'll say David really, because I mean, he's the brains behind our AI team. You can email him at Thorne, THORNE at missionalmarketing.com, or you can leave a comment on our YouTube channel if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, and we'll be glad to interact with you there. Love to know how we can help you get a better grip on things that are going on in the world of AI and how you can utilize these tools, these resources in the context of your church. And you know what? Maybe it's just a matter of how we can coach you on how you can coach your own church and congregation about how AI can be a benefit to your church. It's not a creepy, scary, robots taking over the world thing. There are a lot of great benefits, and I think the church will be better for it. Again, ethics are a big part of it, and we talk about that a lot. But there's just a lot of room to grow in this area. So all that being said, thanks again for joining us. Here's David's interview with Corey.
Hi, everyone. I'm here with Corey Alderin, co-founder of SermonShots. Hey, Corey.
Hey.
Thanks for being with us.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to invite him on, and we can explain a little bit about what SermonShots is and just talk a little bit about what he's learned about AI. But before we do that, Corey, I would just like to jump in with a few hard-hitting questions before we jump into the topic at hand. Is that cool?
Sounds good.
All right. So be prepared. Here we go. Question number 1, Corey. Pizza or Chinese?
Pizza for sure. Pizza's
All right.
my
Do you have a favorite?
What's that?
You have a favorite spot?
Yeah. Well, I'm fortunate that we have like 10 spots within about 3 miles of us. Pizza's very popular around here, I guess. But we do, my family and I have a favorite one that we can just walk to across the street, actually. So
nice. Very cool. How about a favorite sports team?
The Cowboys.
Oh, that's a poor choice.
That's a polarizing one. So I've lost some fans and gained some right there, I think.
Yeah, it is. You definitely have lost some and gained some. Some people, you just became their best friend. Others, worst enemy.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 3, a favorite AI tool.
My favorite one that I use, and this isn't a fancy one probably, but and it's been around for a while, so some maybe not even realize it is technically AI, but I use Grammarly all the time. I'm horrible at spelling, always have been my whole life, and that thing has saved me some embarrassments in the past. But on that, I guess if I were to more specifically, some more recent AI tools, I guess I use ChatGPT all the time. Again, for writing, a lot of writing that I do just is really helpful.
Yeah.
Again, saves me. If I didn't have it, I probably would be embarrassed by some things that I wrote.
Yes, that's great. I also, Grammarly is awesome. And for those of you who don't know what Grammarly is, it's something you can add to anything you write that just automatically live tells you what you wrote incorrectly and suggests fixes. And it is awesome. Everyone should definitely be using Grammarly.
Yeah. And more than just spelling. Spelling's the big one, but it helps me with like, oh, you didn't say that right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. All right. Last question is, can you name a task, personal or in work, that you wish AI could do for you?
So like a thing that I just hate doing, probably, right? Like, this is probably just because it's fresh in my memory, but if it could help me get rid of the leaves in my yard, I would absolutely love it. I have trees all over the place around me, and I am constantly doing leaves right now, this time of the year. So, or just maybe yard work in general.
Yeah. That's like, they need like they've made Roombas for yard mowing.
You're right. Yep.
But they need the next Roomba that focuses specifically on like raking leaves. So whatever that yard cutting Roomba thing is, you need like a rake attachment on the front, and then you need the AI to determine where is the pile you want to create.
Exactly.
It seems a very reasonable thing for us to expect that people should create.
Yeah, it'll be coming, hopefully.
Yeah. That's awesome. And some people, I don't know if anyone who's listening, but they have like the acorn problem where like their trees drop 1 million acorns. Do you have that problem?
Walnuts. I have a couple walnut trees. Okay. Those are bad too.
And so that's like a whole different thing. You almost need like a shovel that just goes through your yard. So like leaves is one thing, but like shoveling acorn or walnuts or whatever other thing is like a whole different thing.
I make a game out of it, and it helps a little bit for my kids where I just say, take it and see how far you can throw it. Chuck it over there. So it works for a while.
It's good for a good 5 minutes, but cool. All right. So I would love just to chat about SermonShots and then the AI behind it. So could you just start by telling us what SermonShots is and explaining where AI fits into what SermonShots does?
Yeah, so I guess at the basic level of what SermonShots does, it helps you take your sermon and turn it into content for your social media, and more specifically, short form video. So reels, Facebook reels, Instagram reels, TikTok, YouTube shorts, that sort of thing. So helping you take your good, like quotable moments and turn them into videos. So that is really the basics of what it does. And the AI built into it is really all about how can we help the users save time doing that thing. And so there's a few different AIs built into it. The main one that I think people probably recognize and realize is what we call AI suggested clips. And it is picking those moments for you. So suggesting, hey, here's a 30-second moment. Here's a 45-second moment that we think would be a good moment for you to share on social media.
Yeah.
So
that's such a cool thing. And I kind of like just wonder, like, how does that work? Like, how does the AI determine here are the 5 clips I, as the AI, suggest these 5 clips. How does it identify those?
Yeah, so we are, well, first I'll say, this is a little bit of our secret sauce, so I probably won't give away everything, but I can speak generally about it.
Okay, yeah.
We utilize as many tools as possible. We are constantly evaluating and trying to improve, so it changes kind of like how many things we're using, month to month. But generally, we're probably using 3 different sources to kind of help with that. So it's like an API here to do one step, another API to do this step. So things like ChatGPT and those all are really helpful. But then it also comes combined into SermonShots with some of our stuff that we're doing specifically for churches. So it's what are we learning that is working for churches and building that into the selection process as well.
Yeah.
Does that?
Well, yeah. So basically, it's acknowledging that there is some secret sauce, that this is a moving target, and you guys as a company have to keep figuring out how to get better and better at it. And there's multiple steps and processes that you are continuing to figure out as you go along to make it better and better. But there are things like a ChatGPT that you use to try to identify the ideal clips.
Yep, correct. So ChatGPT is the one that probably everybody knows, and that one helps a lot throughout the process of doing some things. But in ChatGPT can't do everything yet, and so we're utilizing other kind of sources, other things as well, to kind of make sure that we're giving you the best selections.
Yeah. How about like just even backing up a bit tell people who are listening, like, how did you get into doing sermon clips using AI? So how did that happen?
Yeah. So I guess we didn't really intend originally, and we didn't intend originally to be using AI. That was never the end goal. The end goal was always, how can we make this process of making clips easier? Early on, through some other things that I've done in the past, we were talking with churches a lot about things that they needed help with, and this clips, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, just kept coming up over and over and over. Like, this is the thing we're doing, and it's taking us 2 hours to do on a clip, and so basically, it seemed like this was the thing that churches needed help with, and so we just started putting something together. My history, I guess, my background is a developer in design space, and so I already knew kind of this space. That was also partly why we got into this. Was I already had some knowledge in this area, so we started putting something together, and again, it wasn't AI specific. Like, that wasn't the end goal. The end goal was just, how can we make clips for churches really easy? And then throughout that process, even more recently, 12 months ago, AI has just exploded, right? Like, access to AI has exploded. And so now we build that in to make that happen. So is that?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking that there's people who are listening who are not doing clips at all for their churches. So maybe could you just explain a little bit, why would a church consider doing sermon clips at all? What's the benefit of doing that? And maybe just for those of you who, in case there's someone who's like, I don't even know what that even means, maybe also just kind of give a brief explanation of what is what is vertical form content,
Sure.
Where do you see that kind of stuff?
Yeah. And apologies, I probably should have mentioned that at the beginning in my original answer. But yeah, short form video, Reels, is right now is really where most of the reach on social media is happening. Not just churches, but all social media. And it's the vertical format. Think TikTok. I think most people know TikTok. Now, I'm not saying that TikTok is where you need to be, but just think TikTok. It's the vertical format taking up your whole space, right? So vertical format, when I mean, it's like this, not how we typically watch, horizontal. And it's short. People want short clips now. And when I say short, generally under 60 seconds, 30 seconds is kind of probably around an average of a lot of these. And then when you combine this with churches, it's what I call a sermon clip. So it's take your sermon and do that, right? Because your sermon, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 2 hours, however long you do your sermon, can't fit on that platform. That's not what that platform is for. Those platforms are specifically for short clips. And I feel like churches that aren't doing this then are missing out on a huge opportunity. So if you just say, no, my sermon can't fit there, you're missing out, because this is where a significant amount of people are getting all their entertainment, their news, this is where people are. I've seen stats that show that people are watching just as much videos on these platforms as they are watching Netflix. And so this is where people are. And if you're not, if the church is not in those platforms, I feel like not only the big C church is missing out on that opportunity, but just you individually, your church individually reaching people that want to hear what you have to say. So, yeah, I kind of, that was a long probably answer to that, but that's why I think churches should be there.
Yeah. And the two things that I want to point out that I agree with, and I also noticed from speaking with churches, is as a church, our goal, our mission is to go where people are. And to your point, people are watching vertical form video, often mindlessly scrolling up from video to video, watching people, I don't know, whatever
Yeah.
mindless videos that we scroll ourselves through, quotes from scenes from TV shows and whatever the algorithm wants to show us.
Yeah.
But why not church clips and sermon clips? And if that is a thing that in just a brief moment can grab somebody's heart attention to incite them to take a next step with God or a connection with a local church, then that's where the church needs to be. And so it's I feel like it's moving towards with churches that something like sermon shorts and sermon snippets are almost like low-hanging fruit when it comes to social media, where for a church to be on social media, a very low-hanging fruit you should be doing is creating some snippets using a platform like SermonShots or SermonShots. Sorry, we have all the words in my head.
Yeah.
SermonShots, SermonShots. Yes.
Well, people call them sermon shorts as well. So
yes, I know, which is it works well because you're like, if you want sermon shorts, you go to SermonShots. So, but a platform like SermonShots or something else, and it's kind of low hanging fruit because a platform like SermonShots makes it easy, and so it's actually a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, and I think to build on top of what we're saying there about the importance is for the local church as well. What makes these vertical format like videos different is how these platforms are showing them to people. So it's not like what social media used to be, where you post something and it gets seen by 10% of your followers. And then if one of your followers likes it, maybe an occasional random person will then also see it because they're associated with that person, right? But now it's actually mostly the other way. They're sharing it to anybody. It actually, who follows you doesn't even matter. And so you have the potential to reach and expand way past your followers most churches are actually seeing that their clips get seen by more people that aren't their followers than are. And that's huge for the church. And then even taking that another step further, combining that with the fact that these algorithms are just so smart. They're sending it to the people they think will like it. One of the parts of the algorithm is location. So if location is a significant part of your video, which a church is in a lot of cases, your clip will be shown more to people around you than outside, at least all else being equal. That these algorithms are very complicated, so it's not that simple, but people are getting to see them that are closer to you, which is huge for the church. So
Yeah. It kind of makes me just kind of move towards thinking about where this is going and what's next. So I kind of be curious, either just for SermonShots itself or just bigger picture, if you think about sermon clips using AI related to sermons for churches. Tell me what you think is next and kind of like where churches' minds should start going next when it comes to sermons, sermon clips, that kind of stuff.
Like what are...
Well, how about maybe just even you guys, how about you guys specifically with SermonShots? Where is your guys' mind going next for where you think, where's this train going? You know, what kind, are there features you're thinking about developing? Whatever you can share, just brainstorm, that kind of stuff.
Sure. I can speak very specifically to a thing that I can now publicly say that is coming in the next couple of weeks. Is a new AI feature called AI Camera Crew, which is basically for churches who don't have the vertical format, right, is a much smaller space left and right. And most churches have a pastor who doesn't just stay right in the middle and doesn't have a camera that follows them. So they've got this wide area. And so if the pastor goes off the vertical, our camera will follow them basically to keep them in the center so that they're always in the center of the vertical format. And it looks just like you actually have a camera person there doing it. So yeah, that is useful in a lot of cases for this, specifically for churches, is really helpful.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah. So if you follow SermonShots at all, or you do after this, you'll see some news come out here really soon about that.
Cool. That's awesome, Corey. Yeah, it's very cool.
And then generally, I can't speak to a whole lot of specifics here, but generally, I think there's more you can do with your video than just clips. There's there's a little bit longer format stuff that you can do with your videos. There's, some churches do like 5 to 8 minute sort of like recaps on their stuff. Like those are things, just as a general thought, that there's more you can do video wise with your sermon. So, yeah, we are constantly thinking about, all the different things and testing, doing a little bit R&D in the background with all these different things.
Cool. That's very awesome. Yeah. And it is exciting to think about, like what's next and where we're going next. And the crazy thing is that it changes so fast. Like, I mean, that's where like all of a sudden DALL-E 3 comes out and ChatGPT 4 adds in.
I will say all these things that happen in the AI space give us more ideas as well. I think how churches and what we're seeing churches do that works well, like if, they're churches find that doing this thing on their sermon clip is really helpful. And we see that trend happening. Like one great thing about us is we can jump on those things pretty quickly and say, oh, here, this is what's working for other churches. You can now do this in SermonShots. So those are things that we're constantly looking at too.
Cool. So just as we think about where do we go next? If a person is listening to this and they're saying, I don't know where to start, how would you suggest a person get started with, vertical form video, even, with SermonShots?
Yeah, on SermonShots, we've made this process pretty simple because we have heard this a lot. A lot of churches say, well, I don't even know I have no idea what to do to get started. So we have an option actually where you can sign up and we will make the 2 clips for you as we make them, we send them to you, you post them, and just confirm what we're saying, that if you post these things, you'll get a lot of views. This is what people want to see. So we make the clips for them. And then we have a person on our team who's devoted to just, here's the clips that we made for you. Let me just in 10 minutes show you how this works. I'll prove it to you that I made this clip in 10 minutes on SermonShots. And it's really simple. And most people are like, well, I've heard multiple times, oh, I thought that was more like a marketing message. Oh, make sermon clips in 5 minutes, make sermon clips in 10 minutes. I thought that was, just a marketing message. But they're like, oh, yeah, you just showed me. Like, you just did it. I can do that. So that's the process that we typically see, that we tell people to take on SermonShots.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll have a link in our podcast notes here that people can click on to just kind of, check out SermonShots. You can go to your website, sermonshots.com as well. But yeah, we whether it's SermonShots again, I want to invite you on to chat about SermonShots specifically, but just saying there's other ones out there, and SermonShots is a great one. And we as a company don't, it's not like we're married to any one place, but we do think SermonShots is a cool option. And but the big picture is we do think every church should be considering creating a vertical form video from their sermons to help their sermons go further. We talk about all the time at Missional Marketing how churches spend a large portion of their research or resources investing in sermons, and their sermons are the primary discipleship method that they use for their congregations. But the crazy sad thing is that most churches or a pastor will spend 20 up to 30 hours a week working on this thing, present it, close the book on it, put it on the shelf, and never think about it again.
Right.
And it just seems like such a travesty, and to be honest, like a waste of resources and a waste of God's Spirit filling a person to share a thing, a life-giving message that can go way further than just Sunday morning. So that's where we're always just trying to encourage churches. We want to help your sermons go further than just Sunday. Yeah. And so that's where something like SermonShots or creating vertical form video from your sermons is a very helpful step in helping that happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks so much, Corey. It was great to chat. Thanks so much for your insight about the vertical form video sermons and introducing us to SermonShots. And thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was good.